Welcome, everyone, to Buddhist Center. Happy Sunday. I'm so glad we're all here to be able to discuss the most important topic in the world, and that's the Dharma, right? We're able to hear about the things we can do in order to end our suffering and others' suffering permanently. So what a wonderful thing that we have here. You know, we've all gotten together to figure out how to do that. And that's a very rare occurrence. So I want to say thank you all for coming. I'd like to just get started right away with our normal way that we do it. Everybody's familiar now with the 7-point Virucana posture. If you're new and you're not familiar with it, we've given multiple classes where we've explained it and explained the benefits. So we'll just go through the posture really quickly so that we can set kind of a physical intention and then set our mental intention and try to get ourselves to a place of neutrality where we can build upon that neutrality with positive things. We come here with a lot of different thoughts. We come here where we're angry at some things and we're overly attached to other things. And sometimes those invade our mind when we're trying to do spiritual practice. And because it's so important for us to listen clearly, because if we want to have the wisdom arisen from hearing, we have to hear things properly. It's important for us to start from a place where we could actually hear them. And if our mind is racing and busy and all over the place, we're not really able to fully listen well. So it's for that reason we'll start with this real intentional activity to try to get our minds pointed at something reasonable and then pointed at something virtuous. So we'll get started with the 7-point Virucana posture, where we put our legs preferably into the lotus posture, half lotus, cross-legged, or with our feet on the floor, whatever we're able to do. We have our right hand on top of our left with our thumbs touching. This is symbolic of the union of method and wisdom. And then we have our back straight like a stack of coins, and our shoulders in a comfortable posture with our arms, slightly out like a bow, it says. And then have our head slightly tilted forward in a comfortable posture, not like this or back, just in a comfortable posture. And then our eyes slightly touching, slightly looking at the tip of our nose, eyes slightly open, not fully open so that we're excited, not fully closed so that we're dull, just open slightly, staring at the tip of our nose. And then have our tongue resting on the top of our mouths, kind of slightly behind our teeth. And then we can breathe. And when we breathe, we don't want to take very excited breaths. We don't want to take very dull breaths that'll make us feel like almost we're suffocating. We want to breathe very, very evenly through our nose. When we get to the top of that breath, when we fill our diaphragm and our lungs, we can count 1 and then exhale. And we can do that exercise over and over again and try to get to the point where we're focused only on the breath and only on the counting. And that allows our mind to get to this place of neutrality where it isn't attached. It isn't running after things we're attracted to and then attached. It isn't pushing away things that we're angry at. Or that we find not attractive and then we become angry. It's bringing our mind to a neutral place that doesn't have that attachment or that anger so that we can grow virtuous practices from it. So as we're breathing in, we can imagine that we actually see the breath coming in to our nostrils, and we feel the breath coming into our nostrils and filling up our lungs and our diaphragm and so forth. And we feel it leaving our nostrils, and we can actually see it exiting in our nostrils. And however it's best for us to visualize that air, we can imagine it in particles, or we could imagine that the air is in lights or nectars. And this breathing of in and out will be something that will serve as a foundation for a lot of different practices in the future. And some of you are more advanced and may be able to do those practices simultaneously. But for the beginner, it's best just to focus on the breath and the counting to try to become familiar with that process. So we'll take about a minute or so just to get to a neutral place, and then we'll talk about our motivation and we'll read the Heart Sutra. Now we think about our own sufferings and the sufferings that all beings have to endure. We set our motivation that we're in this physical posture in order to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings, so that we can be free from suffering and all sentient beings can be free from suffering. We're breathing in and out in order to get to a neutral place that we can then practice from so that we can become Buddhas for the sake of all sentient beings. We're going to recite the Heart Sutra so that we can become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. We're going to listen to the teaching in order to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. We're here in order to arrive at a place where we want to definitely emerge from cyclic existence. And then we wish that sentient beings could have happiness and the causes of happiness. And we wish that sentient beings could be free from suffering and the causes of suffering, just like we would like to be. So it's for that reason that I'm attending this teaching. It's for that reason that I'm giving this teaching, is in order to produce more love and compassion for sentient beings, so that I may realize the mind that aspires to enlightenment, so that I may become a Buddha for their sakes, so that I can fulfill mine and all sentient beings' needs. It's for that reason that I'm here today. That humongous reason, that vast reason. We're here today for countless sentient beings. Countless because we can't even imagine the number of them. That's why we're here. We're here to make our mind that large, where we love everyone. We put others' needs before our own. We cherish others instead of this self-cherishing attitude that we have that keeps us rounding in cyclic existence over and over and over again. This chronic disease of self-cherishing that causes every misery in the world, as the Guru Puja says, and as Shanti Deva says in Bodhicitta Avatara. So like those great pandits and like all the beings that came before that became Buddhas, may I engage in that path. May I hear the things that they heard so that I may become a Buddha for the sake of sentient beings. Because it's in the state of Buddhahood that I can truly be of benefit to others. And all of my own needs will have been fulfilled if I achieve that goal. And all other sentient beings' needs are achieved when I achieve that goal, because then I'm in a position to truly, truly be of benefit to them. So it's for that reason that we're here today. May the words of these teachings, may the words of the sutra, may the words of these prayers be able to be understood in the language of all sentient beings. May all sentient beings hear these words and understand them, and as a result become Buddhas. The Sutra of the Heart of Transcendent Knowledge. Thus have I heard, once the Blessed One was dwelling in Rajagriha at Vulture Peak Mountain, together with a great gathering of the Sangha of monks and a great gathering of the Sangha of bodhisattvas. At that time, the Blessed One entered the samadhi that expresses the Dharma called profound illumination. At the same time, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, while practicing the profound Prajnaparamita, saw in this way. He saw the five skandhas to be empty of nature. Then, through the power of the Buddha, Venerable Shariputra said to noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, how should a son or daughter of noble family train who wishes to practice the profound Prajnaparamita? Addressed in this way, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, said to Venerable Shariputra, O Shariputra, son or daughter of noble family who wishes to practice the profound Prajnaparamita should see in this way, seeing the five skandhas to be empty of nature. Form is emptiness, emptiness also is form. Emptiness is no other than form, form is no other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, perception, formation, and consciousness are emptiness. Thus, Shariputra, all dharmas are emptiness. There are no characteristics, there is no birth and no cessation. There is no impurity and no purity. There is no decrease and no increase. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness, there is no form, no feeling, no perception, no formation, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no appearance, no sound, no smell, no taste, no touch, no dharmas, no I dhatu up to no mind dhatu, do dhatu of dharmas, no mind consciousness dhatu, no ignorance, no end of ignorance up to no old age and death, no end of old age and death, no suffering, no origin of suffering, no cessation of suffering, no path, no wisdom, no attainment, and no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, since the bodhisattvas have no attainment, they abide by means of Prajnaparamita. Since there is no obscuration of mind, there is no fear. They transcend falsity and attain complete nirvana. All the Buddhas of the three times by means of Prajnaparamita fully awaken to unsurpassable, true, complete enlightenment. Therefore, the great mantra of Prajnaparamita, the mantra of great insight, the unsurpassed mantra, the unequaled mantra, the mantra that calms all suffering should be known as truth, since there is no deception. Prajnaparamita mantra is said in this way: Teata om gate gate paragate parasangati bodhisoha. Thus, Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, should train the profound Prajnaparamita. Then the Blessed One arose from that samadhi and praised noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, saying, Good, good, O son of noble family. Thus it is, O son of noble family. Thus it is. One should practice the profound Prajnaparamita just as you have taught, and all the Tathagatas will rejoice. When the Blessed One had said this, Venerable Shariputra and noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, that whole assembly in the world with its gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas, rejoiced and praised the words of the Blessed One. Gala jibe ne jo damba ne nguje du ju nga yi du do jen ru ba bo la ma yi bo jen zi ne zo ngan ro zo la ja ze lo aga samara da sana ra samara be aga samara da sana ra samara. Aga samara dajanara samara yamedi ada onga de gate baragate barazangati udiso baba ganju sanji gai de me doji je de ji me doji se ji jagi baji me de bishu dan ji je dengo yeso ngere don ja je je wa da me do no be jan dan de wa dan do ba don ji bon zon zon jo ji da ji de jan den da de le yo. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. Holy Lamas high, wrap the sky of your Dharma bodies in massive clouds of knowledge and love, and let them pour upon the earth of your disciples as we are ready a shower of rain, the teachings deep and wide. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Gamni Radayami. Sanye jadan ye jana la janju badu da nye jazu ji da gi ji nye ji pe sanan ji jala ben ji san ji ju ba ju sanye jadan ye jana la janju badu da nye jazu ji da gi ji pe sanan ji Jola benji sanje juba jo sanje jadan ye jana la janju badu da nye jasu ji da ji ji shi ji pe sunan ji jola benji sanje juba jo. Hey everyone. Hope you are all very well. Today, once again, we're here to talk about the Lam Rim. Specifically, we're looking at the outline of Lama Tsongkhapa's great treatise on the stages of the path to enlightenment. But I'd like to just kind of take a side detour a little bit and just talk about something specific today. Because I've just been thinking a lot about all of the terrible things that are going on. I think that we all have, right? The wars, school shootings. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. These are just the sufferings we know about and can see. Sufferings we've had to endure and heard about. You know, all of these terrible things that are currently going on. Sentient beings are having a really, really difficult time in the human realm, and specifically in our world right now. And I was trying to figure out what we can do as individuals. You know, there's so many issues, right? What does an individual do? You know, do we protest? Do we sign petitions? Do we call our congressman? Probably all of those things. But what can we as individuals really do to make it a kinder place to live in? Because we, as Buddhists, understand that we participate in a world with our emotions and our behaviors, and that participation and our mental consciousness kind of in a little way, when we look collectively, helps to shape that world that we live in. So when we looked at collective karma, what are we doing as an individual to make this world that we live in a more loving, kind place? You know, what steps can we take as individuals to make sure that the energy that we're putting out is love, is compassion, and that our activities are saturated with that. So when we're behaving, our behaviors of our, you know, what we're saying with our mouth and what we're doing with our body is coming from a place of love and compassion. And if we could arrive at that place somehow, we would then be kind of one part of a collection that was love. And the more of us that could do that, right, in theory, you know, based on how we believe, what we believe, the more of us that, you know, could live in an ethical way, the better the world would become. I mean, it has to be like that. There's just no way that it isn't like that, that when we look at dependent origination, that I have some part in everything going on in the world. You know, I'm not making it happen. I don't have that kind of control, just, you know, but everyone plays their part in terms of dependent origination, in terms of what this world looks like and how it is. And when we look at the Lamrim Chemo and we look at what ethical discipline is, we see that it is an attitude of abstention that turns your mind away from harming others and from the sources of such harm. So how would we become more ethical? What are some very, very specific things that the Buddha taught us to do in order to become more ethical? And I think that this topic right now is a topic that I'm going to bring up, which isn't brought up a lot, especially in Tibetan Buddhism, because, you know, the lineage that we study are from masters that came from Tibet. There was a very specific geography. So the topic I'm going to talk about for a very, very short period of time today is vegetarianism. And the reason I'm going to do that is because I'm trying to figure out what kind of advice I could give to others and what kind of advice I could take myself, and to what degree I could take it in order to make the world a better place. And I think this is a good place to start. I have been a vegetarian a very, very long time, but there's ways to tweak that. You know, am I vegan? Am I involved in, you know, the industry that, you know, produces eggs and so forth? So these are all things that I need to look at. And why am I even bringing this up? Well, you know, geographically, Tibet was in a place where there wasn't the same resources that we have. So a lot of the teachers that we had ate meat. And then in Tibet, you know, they use the sutras to understand that, you know, if there's no way around it and you have to eat it to survive, you can look at it, eating meat, with some various ways of looking at it, in order to basically make yourself feel better about it and not connect to it in such a violent way. But the bottom line is that we as Westerners have different resources and different abilities. And the Buddha even said in the sutra that I'm about to read, that in the future, there would be all these justifications and reasonings why you could eat, you know, meat and so forth. So this isn't, you know, a discussion I'm trying to have about the environment. I'm not having a discussion today about, you know, being an activist or anything like that. I'm just discussing karma, its results, and how we could, as an individual, because of dependent origination, create a world that was less violent. So I just want to read this very interesting sutra. It's the Lankavatara Sutra, very famous sutra, the descent into the Lanka Sutra, Mahayana Sutra. It's not something that's obscure, but it's probably something you don't hear very much about in Tibetan Buddhism. But it's something that I think we need to take into consideration, because you see in the sutra the origin that all sentient beings are our mother, our brother, our sister, our father, etc. And you see that the root of cyclic existence is posited in a very, very interesting way in the sutra. So I wanted to read, I'm not going to read all of this section of the sutra because it's humongous. And I encourage you all to later on read more of it. But I found it to be so interesting a few months ago, maybe 6, when I was sorting through ethics and I was looking at ethical discipline and harm and non-harm and sources of harm. And I stumbled upon this sutra, and I thought that it would be nice to share. So I'm going to share it today because it's sometimes when you hear something this simple and you can modify your behavior so simply, and you can start to connect to all sentient beings in a different way and start to have love and compassion for them in a different way and to look at it differently. This is all wonderful stuff. So this is why I wanted to do this today, and let's get started. So this is from a section from chapter 16 specifically of this sutra. It says, at that time, so it starts up, you know, we're in the middle of a sutra here. So it says, at that time, Arya, the sage, Mahamadi, Bodhisattva Mahasattva said to the Buddha, Buddha, Bhagavan, honored one, I see that in all the worlds, the wandering in births and deaths, the enlaced animosities, and the falling into evil paths are all caused by meat eating and cyclical killing. Those behaviors increase greed and anger and make living beings unable to escape from suffering. That is truly very painful. Bhagavan, people who eat meat are destroying the great merciful seed of their own. Thus, the people who practice the holy way should not eat meat. Bhagavan, the exterior paths practitioners preach, the incorrect theories which may fall into the mundane views, nihilism, eternalism, existentialism, or non-existencism. However, all of their theories forbid meat eating. So here he's saying, like, well, all these other non-Buddhists are saying to not eat meat, but they have wrong views. They do not eat meat and do not allow others to eat meat. So would it be possible that for the cultivators who practice the Brahma behavior, according to the pure Dharma of the Tathagata, there's no rule to forbid meat eating? So it's saying, so maybe there's not a rule. We're not them. This is different. The Tathagata, the Bhagavan, equally gives his mercy and compassion to all living beings. How could he allow meat eating? Virtuous Bhagavan, please tell us the offenses of meat eating and meritorious virtues of not eating meat. Once we have heard it, all the bodhisattvas and I will faithfully practice it, widely preach and spread it abroad, to make all living beings of the past and the present and the future aware of it. The Buddha told Arya Mahamati Bodhisattva, good, Mahamati, you are greatly compassionate. Having pity on all living beings, you ask this question. Now listen attentively and I'll tell you. Mahamati Bodhisattva said to the Buddha, how virtuous, Bhagavan? Yes, I'll accept the teaching. The Buddha told Mahamati, meat eating has countless offenses. All bodhisattvas should cultivate their great mercy and compassion, so they should not eat meat. Now I am telling you in brief the merits of not eating meat and the offenses of eating meat. Please listen attentively. Mahamati, I see that from beginningless time, because of the habit of meat eating and the greed for the flavor of meat, living beings kill and hurt each other in never-ending cycles, and they are apart from sages and suffering from births and death. Those who renounce the flavor of meat can taste the flavors of the true dharmas, truthfully practice the bhumi stages of the bodhisattva, and attain anuttara, samyak sambuddhi quickly. They can then make all living beings enter the resting place of Shravaka and Prachika Buddha, and after that make them enter the stage of the Tathagata. Mahamati, these benefits are based on the merciful heart. People who eat meat are destroying the great merciful seed of their own. Then how could they get these great benefits? Mahamati, I see that living beings are in the transmigration of the six paths. Being together in births and deaths, they give birth to and foster each other's, and cyclically become fathers, mothers, brothers, and sisters of each other. They may be men or women, may be the direct line of descent, may be cousins, affinities, uncles, aunts, sons, daughters, grandsons, and other various relatives of each other. They may also be born in other paths of animal ghosts and gods and so on. Whether virtuous or evil, they frequently become the relatives of each other. Because of these relationships, I see that all meats eaten by living beings are of their own relatives. Due to the greed for flavors of meats, the living beings circularly eat each other, then they always have the thoughts of hurting each other. Their painful karmas are always increasing, so they are wandering in cycles of birth and death and unable to escape. After the Buddha said that, all the Rakshas who heard the Buddha's word gave up their ferocious mind and stopped eating meat. These are beings who only eat meat. They persuaded each other to arouse the merciful heart and to make protecting the lives of all beings prior to protecting their lives of their own, to give up eating meat. Weeping and sobbing, they said to the Buddha, Bhagavan, having heard the Buddha said that in the six paths, all the meat we eat are of the relatives of our own, we now know that meat eating makes us the big enemies of living beings. Let's look at that. Makes us the big enemies of living beings. So it puts the seeds that we are enemies of living beings in our mind, destroys our great merciful seeds, increases evil karma, and is the root of great suffering. Bhagavan, from now on, we stop eating meat and will never allow my relatives to eat meat. If any disciple of the Tathagata does not eat meat, we will guard and support him or her day and night. For anyone who eats meat will do great bad things to them. The Buddha said, Mahamati, the Rakshas are ferocious ghosts who constantly eat meat. Having heard my words, even they can arouse the merciful heart and give up meat eating. So how could my disciples who practice virtuous dharma be allowed to eat meat? If anyone eats meat, we should know that he is the enemy of living beings and is destroying his holy seed. Mahamati, having heard my words, if any of my disciples does not honestly consider that and still eats meat, we should know that he is a candidate. He is of the killer's lineage. He is not of my disciple, and I am not his teacher. Therefore, Mahamati, if anyone wished to be my relative or in my Buddha's family, he should not eat any meat. Furthermore, Mahamati, bodhisattvas should discern that all meats are from the filthy bodies, which are combined by pus, blood, dirtiness, white drops of the parents. Thus, discerning the dirtiness of meat, bodhisattvas should not eat meat. But for anyone who eats meat, his smell frightens living beings and makes them run away. Therefore, bodhisattvas practice according to the truth in order to enlighten all living beings. They should not eat meat. For example, whenever there are killers, hunters, butchers, fishers, or birders, when the living beings see them remotely, they think, we are going to die. These approaching killers are very atrocious beings, and they are not aware of sins or bliss. They kill living beings for their current earning. Now they come to look for us, and we have flesh on our bodies, so when they find us, we'll surely die. Mahamati, due to meat eating, one can make the living beings who see him so frightened Mahamadi, all living beings, whether they are celestial or terrestrial, when they see a meat eater, they will all be frightened and think, I don't know whether I'm going to die now. This flagellous being now does not cultivate the merciful heart. He is like a jackal or a wolf who cruises in the world and seeks for meat. He is insatiable like a cow eating grass, like a dung beetle pursuing dung. My body is made of flesh, so I am his food. I should not encounter him. Thinking of this, they turn aside and escape hastily, like human being fears Raksa. So Mahamadi, a meat eater, can make the living beings who see him so frightened. Thus we know that meat eating makes one the big enemy of living beings. Therefore, bodhisattvas should cultivate mercy and compassion in order to gather in and teach all living beings. They should not eat those living beings. Meat is not the food for a sage and wise people. Meat eating is infamous and is criticized by sages. Therefore, Mahamadi, in order to gain in and teach all living beings, bodhisattvas should not eat meat. I bring this up because it's not something that is talked about quite a bit in our Buddhist tradition, but it's talked about a lot and is one of the basis of ethics in many of the other Buddhist traditions, and the Chinese Buddhism, Vietnamese Buddhism, and other Buddhisms around the world. And the Buddha did say, of course, this is, other things. The Buddha said, if you have no other means of food, or when the monks would go out and beg for alms, they had to deal with what was put into their plate, put into their begging bowl. Totally understandable. But if you look at, trying to be all sentient beings' protector, and trying to develop love and compassion for all sentient beings who have been our mothers, abstention from eating meat certainly falls into the category of an attitude of abstention that turns your mind away from harming others and from the sources of such harm. When we look at killing, it's killing done by ourselves. When we look at the 10 non-virtues, killing is something that we do ourselves. We separate a sentient being from their life ourselves, or we order it to be done. So when we look at some of the points that are made to as reasoning of why you can justify having eaten meat, and this is usually in the Vinaya in relation to if you have no other choice but to eat it, then you can look at it like this, where you would look at it like if a tiger comes and kills an animal, right? And then the buzzard comes for the leftovers. Then the buzzard didn't kill an animal. They're there for the leftovers. So this is the common theme that I've heard for 25 years now in Tibetan Buddhism. It's like, oh, it's okay. We'll have momos on Losar full of meat, and we'll eat meat things. It's okay. There's some tantric blessing going on. And then there's also, we're just going to look at it like we're buzzards. But that takes our brains out of that formula and just puts into that formula, we want to eat meat and we like these things to eat. And, we're following around people from a totally different geography that had no choice but to eat meat. So they continued to eat meat. And it's okay because they do. And it really isn't okay. It really, the Buddha talked about there are, varying reasons why you would have to, for medical reasons. But we have to look scripturally and look culturally at the time. Meat and alcohol were actually prescribed as medicine for bile or wind or different ailments. So the Buddha wasn't talking about, like this very subtle, I think I feel a little stronger today when I ate meat. So, that's the reasoning. It's medical today. We really have to look at our intention behind everything that we do. And we have to say, are we the buzzard? If we understand supply and demand, we don't leave our brains at the door. We understand that as consumers, if we purchase something, we create the reason for it to be produced. Is that ordering it to be killed? We are spending our money. We know what we're buying. We understand factory farming. We understand that whole process. Are we giving our money to try to think like, what's the best way to make sentient beings safe? If this money I'm giving, obviously we can't Like, right, if we eat a vegetable, the ground was plowed, I understand, and bugs were killed. There's, but what's the harm reduction model in this life that I live? What's the least amount of harm that I can do? What's the most ethical? How can I be most ethical? How can I get an attitude, which is an abstention? I abstain from something. What am I abstaining from? Harming others and being involved with it, an abstention that turns your mind away from harming others and from sources of such harm. So that's where I start as a practitioner. And this is just one little subject, but it's interesting when we look at this subject. Then we look at, not even this subject, when we're, out doing gardening or when we're planting things, are we being mindful as we can be? Obviously, we have to engage in life's activities, I have to go out and mow the lawn. Am I just driving around, or am I looking to make sure there's not a frog or something? There's obviously bugs. So am I doing the best I can to not harm sentient beings? I think sometimes this is why a lot of the yogis sit in a cave, because that's how they can really, really refrain from harm in the highest way. Because as soon as you begin participation in the world, you're participating in harm in some degree. You're participating in terms of dependent origination, and it all depends on your intention. Of course, that's where the Buddha said it all starts, and everything that we're going to experience in the future in terms of the karmic seeds that we plant, the intensity or lack thereof is going to depend on the intention that we have. I totally understand that. So, what is our intention? And how through dependent origination are we playing a part in a violent world? Are we ourselves violent? And when we think of that, we're like, no, we're not violent. I'm, super kind and nice. I'm not violent at all. But are we driving mindfully? Are we driving and, trying to really, drive in a calm way where we know we could stop if we needed to for sentient beings to not harm them, animals or other cars and so forth? Or are we aggressively driving, trying to get somewhere very fast where we may kill someone? We don't know what's going to happen in 5 minutes when we're driving a car. So are we driving that in an alert way? We know through mindfulness that if we drive recklessly, we can kill someone. So are we guarding that knowledge we have with alertness? Because that's about not harming sentient beings. That's about creating an attitude of nonviolence that the Dalai Lama speaks about. It's trying to figure out in every moment if we're benefiting or harming. And now, of course, that's something we mature into. That's something that a bodhisattva does. That's what someone who becomes a bodhisattva does. That's who we want to become. Somebody who all the time, every moment, is looking at what he or she can do to benefit and not harm. So I think sometimes we can get lost in categories and divisions and learn a lot of stuff and become very, very intelligent about material, but not really be engaging the material, not seeing all, like we learned last week in the Lam Rim outline, that we seeing all the teachings as instructions to practice, not things to learn and, know about, be able to talk about in a coffee shop and sound like an expert on, it's not for that point. Anyway, it's about becoming better and better beings until we're perfect beings, till we're the bestest being, till there isn't a better being we could become. It's just us evolving into the best being we can become. If we realize everything in the small scope, we partially become the best being we can become. If we evolve and realize all the teachings of the medium scope, we get halfway, or we're pretty good, to being the best being we can become. But the Buddha is the best being we can become. And we can become a Buddha because we have Buddha nature. We have a mental consciousness just like the Buddha has, and our mental consciousness is not truly established, just like the Buddha's mental consciousness. We have this Buddha nature. We have this, what is it called? Seed of the Tathagata. We have this. We can mature into the Buddha. It's not something out of our reach, but it has to start with these little tiny things of non-harm and looking at sentient beings as our mothers, brothers, sisters, all of these relationships that we've had before, and understanding that they are those things now. If we look at it from a continuum of consciousness to us. And it makes us a more peaceful person. So it makes our world a more peaceful place. And if we study karma independent origination, us being a more peaceful person, and then I don't know how many people are on here, I don't know. If we add up all the people on here, if everyone today became a little bit more peaceful, because of maybe hearing these words, not my words, the words the Buddha taught, then wouldn't the world be a more peaceful place? It would have to be. If my neighborhood becomes more peaceful, the world's a more peaceful place because my neighborhood's in the world. So we're not, when we look at, helping sentient beings, sometimes it's easy to imagine they're out on, another planet somewhere, and that these realizations and these pathways or these arias and these deities and also all sentient beings are just like on some other planet over there, and we pray for them, but there's not any kind of tangible activity that we're doing on a daily basis that's making us connect with all of them. Think about 3 times a day. If you could eat, right, and think I'm eating in the most alert way right now, in the most compassionate, loving way. I've gathered together my supplies for eating in order to nourish myself so that I can work for all sentient beings. And I've gathered all of these things in the most compassionate, loving way I could. And anyone that was harmed in this process of gathering these things so I can sustain my life, I'm really sorry. I pray for you when may I become a Buddha for your sake. And then we eat in order to be strong enough to be able to practice for the sake of all sentient beings. Now, 3 times a day we do that. Imagine if we became that alert 3 times a day, and we have to eat. So that's why Rinpoche always said, it's wonderful that we can make offerings to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha of our food, because we eat all the time. We're just constantly eating and drinking. So if every time we drink or eat, we offer those things to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, think about how much merit we can create because of the power of the basis. Think about how powerful sentient beings are. It's in dependence upon sentient beings that we become Buddhas. Do we want them killed so that we can eat them? I've never could wrap my mind around that. And I've never wrapped my mind around why we don't talk about it. So, Rinpoche and I talked about this quite a bit, and we always landed on, because, we would have fierce debates, and he would always laugh at the end because he knew that, once we got to supply and demand, he was a logician, right? So he would just say, yeah, it's better, the best, 100%, it's best you don't eat meat, and then we would move on. We had very, very wonderful, not heated, but debates, because it's, Tibetan culture, they eat a lot of meat. And it was something I couldn't wrap my head around until I understood geography and, and also that the higher lamas have abilities to do blessings and things that we can't necessarily do in relationship to the meat and so forth. But that's like way out of my pay grade, right? Like talking about, well, there's this tantric stuff that they can do, so it's fine. And, I'm going to be able to do it later. So it's just rubbish. And I think that the sooner we could just come to terms with it and at least not justify it anymore. I mean, I do stuff all day, right, that isn't correct, but just be, know what you're doing, right? And be honest with yourself about, what it is or not. So Buddhism isn't about, oh, you're bad or judgment or something like that. It's just about being logical, figuring out how we could expand our minds, make them more wise, and figure out how we could love all sentient beings. What would it take to do that? Does it make sense eating them? Would connect us to loving all of them? Maybe if we think, oh, they're nourishing us. Sure, we can do that debate another time, like an American Indian tradition of, oh, this being is sustained, there's more virtue in that than not doing that. But still, come on, we're intelligent human beings. What's the best case scenario, right? So we can pray for those beings without eating them. So, we can walk by it in the supermarket, pray, and go pick up broccoli. We don't have to eat it. We can blow mantras on it right when we're walking by, very discreetly, if that's our, tantric motivation. We don't have to, we could imagine we ate it, unless we're these highly realized tantric beings, and then we're, transforming it into nectar. But if we can imagine that we have 24 arms, we should be able to imagine we're eating something, right? So I think logic just stops the idea that this isn't an important topic at every angle. So I'm not going to go on any further than that about it. But it's just something I wanted to talk about. We can have discussion after also about it. It's a very interesting topic, but it gets misunderstood. I even saw after Rinpoche's passing, someone had mentioned that it was wonderful that they realized that being a Buddhist didn't require them stopping eating meat, because they understood that, if you eat a lot of plants, you take a lot of lives. And that was a total misinterpretation of something, Plants aren't sentient beings. Rinpoche used to say, well, when you eat plants, you kill bugs by plowing a field. But in Buddhism, the Jain tradition considers a plant sentient being, but we do not. We don't consider a piece of broccoli to have consciousness. There may be bugs in it, right, that do, or around it, and so forth. But the broccoli itself, we don't consider that a living being. We don't consider a flower a sentient being, a mind possessor. So a little bit of interesting veer off from the Lam Rim, but I think it's directly related to how we can engage in the practice of the Lam Rim. We say stages of the path to enlightenment. And if Buddhahood is the goal, a Buddha is someone who has this non-biased attention. And that non-biased attention has love and compassion for everyone. So is paying attention to everyone. So if we want to arrive at that place, we need to begin to reduce the harm we do to everyone. And that's how we can have a more peaceful place. And then we have to engage as activists in whatever way we feel is the best way possible, is the best way. And that's different for everyone. When I was younger, I used to stand on the tables at high school and talk about, the environment, and we got all these cans. They weren't recycling at this time. So I had all these bins and had all these cans from the verifying drinks that we had in the machines. And we're destroying the world, we're destroying the environment, and I, had on, I don't know, pins probably and buttons and I don't know, I probably did, right? So this big project, and then we were going to have, everything was going to be recycled and was put in this, and the bags started filling up, and, I really did nothing about it at the end. I just wanted to stand on tables and be different and say I was an environmentalist. So am I behaving like that to get attention, out of ego grasping and self-concern? Am I becoming angry in the midst of it? Is that increasing my anger? Or am I really doing something? And this is something that I've always had to question, myself. And I personally have dipped in and out of both full on engagement and non-engagement for my own personal reasons. But this kind of engagement that we're talking about today is pretty universal, right? Figuring out how to be a more peaceful human to other beings. Not eating their flesh is one thing, but there's, like I said, other ways. Driving, driving in a conscientious way. Walking in a conscientious way. A lot of times you see a lot of the very mindful monks looking down as they're walking. Yes, it's to not be distracted by the things around them, but it's also to make sure there's no bugs or anything that they're going to step on or walk on. Do I, when I go for a walk, look at the ground to make sure I'm not killing anything, And very interesting, right? By me looking at the ground and not stepping on a bug, that makes it so there's less chances for horrible things to happen in the world. Now, it doesn't mean because I didn't step on a bug today, something horrible is not going to happen in the world, right? We have to look at it much, much bigger than that and understand karma in a much, much grander way. But when we look at beginningless lives and we look at this endless continuum, we're going to create a lot of universes and worlds that we abide in and that we label. And if we can change our behavior now and change the way our mind works just a little bit now, slowly in the future lives, our world we're born into will be a less violent world, will be a less dangerous place. And it will be because of our participation. I think that's such a wonderful thing. We have so much power when we look at it like that. We aren't powerless. We have the ability, today, right now, to make the world a more peaceful place by being a more peaceful person. Lama Tsongkhapa's great treatise on the stages of the path to enlightenment. So fortunate to be able to study this text. I just, every time I open this book, I'm just so grateful Khyentse Geshe Wanda gave us the details around this text that he did. And there's so many teachings I can go back to and look at, and it's just incredible. So when we look at the Lamrim outline that we've been studying, we see it begins with a homage to Manjushri. And last week, we went over the prologue, not in a lot of great detail, but we went over the prologue a little bit, and then got to the point where Lama Tsongkhapa presents how he will explain the teaching. So when we look at the outline I'm using as a reference for this teaching, it starts with homage to Manjushri, and then it says that when we give this teaching, if we're to look at an outline of how to give this teaching, it would be 4 specific categories, showing the greatness of the teaching's author in order to establish its from noble origin, showing the greatness of the teaching to engender respect for the instructions, showing how to listen to and explain the teachings, and then how to lead students in the actual instructions. So there's those 4 categories. That first category, you go through, you see how wonderful Lord Atish is, you see how he gained his excellent qualities and generals and so forth. So you see how he was born of an excellent lineage, and had, was very smart and had everything he could ever want, and wanted to, though still found that he was dissatisfied and needed to seek out a guru. And then it says, the second category is upon that basis, how he gained his excellent qualities. When we look at the excellent qualities that he achieved, we see he has these scriptural doctrine, the excellent qualities around scripture. And you see that he had engaged in rigorous study with over 100 teachers and learned, everything that there was possibly to learn about the sutras and the tantras. And he was never satisfied with partial instructions. And that's something that Lama Tsongkhapa followed. he also was never satisfied with partial instructions. And he traveled all around to Tibet, to different teachers in the different traditions at the time to learn the details of the Indian works and some of the commentaries that Tibet already had to try to clarify his understanding more and more and more. And that's what Lord Atisha did. He gained his quality of scriptural knowledge in that way. And then from that knowledge, he practiced, because Lord Atisha saw that all the teachings were instructions for practice. So Lord Atisha then looked at all of these different instructions and saw, okay, we have then these different trainings that have to be realized. And then we see then how Lord Atisha achieved his excellent quality of experiential knowledge based on his learnings. So Lord Atisha engaged in these rigorous studies and then realized the doctrine. He realized the highest higher training in ethics. He realized the highest higher training in concentration and wisdom. And then in the outline, we see the explanation of the common realizations that he had in terms of ethics. I'm sorry, we look at, let me start that over. We look at the category of his highest higher training in ethics, and we see three categories: the ethics of the individual liberation vow, then the ethics of the bodhisattva vow, and then the ethics of the tantric vow. And then the next category is the highest higher training in concentration. And in that we find his common realizations and then uncommon realizations. So the uncommon concentrations, if you will, were related to Tantrayana. So common, the sutra, and the uncommon Tantrayana. And then the highest higher training in wisdom, common and uncommon, the Sutrayana, and then uncommon Tantrayana realizations of wisdom that Atisha had. And then we found the last category was what Lord Atisha did with those things, what he did in India and then what he did in Tibet. He spread the Dharma in India and Tibet and was able to clarify a lot of the misconceptions that were in Tibet at the time, and then create such a wonderful, wonderful Lamrim tradition, Kadampa tradition, that then was able to be summarized by Lama Tsongkhapa and presented to us here in the great treatise of the stages of the path to enlightenment. So such holy, holy, wonderful beings that did this for us. Next category is showing the greatness of the teaching in order to engender respect for the instructions. So in the Lamrim Duden, the Lama Tsongkhapa's abbreviated stages of the path, we actually find a quote that states, "The stages of the path to enlightenment have been transmitted intact by those who have followed in order, both from Nagarjuna and Asanga." So we learned last week that these traditions were passed down. The extensive deeds and the profound view lineage were passed down. The profound view lineage passed down from Nagarjuna, and the extensive deeds lineage passed down from Asanga. And these lineages really encompassed the vast and profound teachings that all of Lord Buddha gave. And then we found that there was also a lineage of blessings that passed down the Tantrayana. But here it's showing how Nagarjuna and Asanga's teachings were all able to be summarized or brought into the Lamrim teachings. So when we see the homage section, we go back to that, we see the homage to Nagarjuna and Asanga, thoroughly renowned throughout the three levels. Ornaments of Jambuviva, who wrote exact commentaries on the intent of the mother of the conqueror, so difficult to fathom. When we look at the beginning of this, it says that this Lamrim Chemo is a commentary on Atisha's lamp for the path to enlightenment, but also a commentary on the Abhisama Alamkara. It says in general, it's a commentary on the ornament for clear realization, the Abhisama Alamkara by Lord Maitreya, that Asanga brought back to our world. But in particular, it's a commentary on Lord Atisha's text. And both Nagarjuna and Asanga wrote extensive works on the Prajnaparamita, on the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras. So Lord Atisha was able to take all of the meanings of all of those great works and kind of bring them into the Lamrim tradition. So it says, the stages of the path to enlightenment have been transmitted intact by those who have followed in order both from Nagarjuna and Asanga, those crowning jewels of all erudite masters of our southern continent, and the banner whose fame stands out above the masses, as following these stages can fulfill every desirable aim of all beings. They are a power-granting king of precious instruction. Because they collect the stream of thousands of excellent classics, they are indeed an ocean of illustrious, correct explanation. Atisha's text makes it easy to understand how there is nothing incompatible in all Buddhist teachings, and makes every scriptural pronouncement without exception dawn on your mind as a personal guideline. It makes it easy to discover what the Buddha intended and protects you as well from the abyss of the great mistake. Because of these four benefits, what discriminating person among the erudite masters of India and Tibet will not have his or her mind be completely taken by these stages of the path, arranged according to the three levels of motivation, the supreme instructions to which many fortunate ones have devoted themselves. So we're so fortunate to have this text that Atisha wrote, and then a commentary on it from Lama Tsongkhapa. Just so fortunate. So those four categories that Lama Tsongkhapa just mentioned are the four categories under the greatness of the teaching in order to engender respect for the instructions, in order to really, really honor and respect these instructions. You see how great they are. So, you know, if you didn't have the stages of the path instructions and you were just to try to pull up 108 sutras, right? And start thumbing through them and trying to find where the exact pathway is in them, you know, trying to put them in some kind of an order, be so difficult. And then you take some Indian commentaries and put them in there. And now you have 213 more bundles of texts, right? Now you're at 313, you know, you're sorting through and trying to figure out what's the first thing I need to do? What's the second thing I need to do? What's the third thing I need to do? And what's the fourth thing I need to do? And the most beautiful thing about the Lamrim tradition is it takes all of the teachings. It takes the Kangjur and the Tanjur, the pronouncements of Lord Buddha, and the authentic Indian commentaries, bundles them all up, and then sorts them out and puts them in an order that one can practice in an unerring fashion in terms of cause and effect, and shows it in terms of cause and effect in a provable manner that A comes after, you know, B comes after A, you know, and that's the order. And it's so incredible. So the first greatness was enabling one to know that all teachings are free of contradiction. If you didn't have the guidelines to see that, oh, this teaching was taught for beings who just want to escape the lower realms, this teaching was taught for beings who want to achieve Buddhahood, this teaching was taught for sharp practitioners who can understand all of the Buddhist teachings in one sentence. If you were to just start picking out those topics and trying to figure out where do I start, it would seem contradictory. It wouldn't seem like it made any sense. Well, this sutra says that sutra says that. And what Atisha did is he was able to kind of put it all into a package that we could understand how it doesn't contradict each other. These teachings are all for the purpose of getting a being from where they are, from that place to Buddhahood. And without a framework of understanding, it becomes quite difficult to understand the intent. But with this framework that Lord Atisha gives us and Tsongkhapa gives us, and, you know, Drontompa and Potawa and Charawa and Sapa, you know, all of these names that we hear, and Tsongkhapa, and, you know, all, and from Tsongkhapa, you know, we see this incredible tradition of commentary. It wasn't like the buck stopped at Tsongkhapa. We have then Kirtupje and Jelsupje and Jayan Sheba and Basu Chuji Jetson, and just so many incredible scholars from Tsongkhapa on, and Panchen Sanandrapa, the text that we're studying on Thursday nights to understand bodhicitta, and all these incredible masters that I couldn't even begin to name all of in the time we have left, that were just sharpening that sword, sharpening the blade of wisdom, you know, making it more understandable, making it more clear, getting rid of any opportunity for misunderstanding. And I'm just so grateful for that. And once you allow the Lam Rim to explain these teachings of the sutras and the tantras and so forth, you see how they're really given at different times for different reasons, and how each of those times what was said might fit into the framework of the teachings for beings of three capacities. The Buddha was either teaching it to make it better for their next life in order for them to be liberated, or in order for them to become Buddhas. The Buddha never said anything to a sentient being for any other reason. There was nothing the Buddha said, because the Buddha could only say things, the Buddha only emanates in order to free beings from suffering. And when we look at when it becomes Buddhism, right? When it's directed at a future, right? Because all of our actions and so forth we've done, and the seeds are in our mind. All we can do is like work on now forward in terms of when we try to modify. We can go back and confess and so forth. But right now is the moment where we can start to try to modify and become more kind, more compassionate, more ethical. And we find out that ethics has everything to do with not harming others and being respectful of others. And, you know, it's not a broad leap from not wanting to harm them to wanting to help them. You can see how the ethics serves as this foundation, how the Mahayana Nagarjuna says that this foundation of all of the other practices is ethics. It's a fertile ground from which all realizations can grow. It's the fertile ground from which concentration can grow. It's the fertile ground from which wisdom can grow. It's a necessary part for the entire process to work as a foundation. So Atisha's text allows a practitioner to read the sutras and tantras and see how there's no contradiction there. This was, stated for this specific purpose. And when we get more and more skilled, we can see what's literal, what's figurative, and so forth, and really be able to understand what's literal and figurative according to the different tenets, because they don't all agree. When you see some of the things that the higher tenets don't agree with, you can check your own mind to see which tenet you were holding or thought you were holding. And that's why the tenets are so beneficial. So it allows us to see that all the teachings were given for the purpose of maturation, for maturing sentient beings. And whatever it took at that moment for the Buddha to say, based on what that being, what the scope of that being was, because the Buddha's omniscient. The Buddha knows like what the being needs to hear at that moment. So the Buddha's like, well, all right, this practitioner, isn't going to be able to grasp nirvana or Buddhahood for that matter. So I'm going to teach him how to, get a better future life so that they can then maybe want to become liberated or become, achieve nirvana, and then ultimately want to achieve Buddhahood. And then he saw some practitioners that, they're definitely candidates who would love to get out of suffering or cyclic existence for themselves alone, but they can't handle me saying that they can become Buddhists. They can't handle me saying that, and you're going to do this for everyone, not for yourself, for the sake of others, really is what you're going to do this for. Buddha saw that some beings couldn't handle that. So Buddha, taught a little bit more to that being and taught that, there was this, final place of nirvana, and didn't teach that particular practitioner, that specificity. Definitely taught it at an outer level. When we look at how all the teachings were brought together, there were definitely public, more broader discourses given, but there were also real specific discourses given that end up in the sutras. So it's important to be able to understand, time, place, and reason, culture, all of those things when we're reading any type of literature. It's, not to be blindly read. And Atisha shows us how to properly read it and read it for ourselves, not telling us, oh, you have to do it this way. You could look at the framework that the Lamrim puts together and then look at the sutras and tantras. And it's much, much easier to say, oh, this goes there, that goes there, that goes there, and that goes there. So it's an incredible freedom that it allows your mind not to be kind of like doubtful when you have this understanding. So the second is the greatness of enabling one to understand that all scriptures are instructions for practice. Like I said, everything that we're learning about, we're supposed to put into our life. We don't come out of meditation and then do something else. It's the post-meditation, it's post-meditation meditation, really. It's meditation just means familiarizing ourselves. As Westerners, we, think it's only this thing where we shut off lights, light some candles, light some incense, put on waves, maybe, or birds, flutes, something, and get into a place where we really feel better about ourselves and we're calmer, and it doesn't feel as stressful. I'm not saying that that's not meditation. We are familiarizing ourselves with being calmer. But really, when we look at the intention of Gom, the meaning, the Tibetan word Gom, it's becoming more familiar. There's meditation where we, do single pointed meditation. And then there's meditation where we analyze things. We're only on one, the one subject with, we're using an object of observation such as the Buddha, and we're focusing solely on that. That's single pointed meditation. But then there's an analytical meditation where we're taking a subject and analyzing it. And Rinpoche used to say, like, where is it that we can't do that unless we're talking, right? Like we're in the car, we can do analysis, we can analyze emptiness, we can think about, I'm driving my car for the sake of all sentient beings, so therefore I'm going to drive more mindfully. I have to drive to the place that I'm going to pick up whatever I need to for the sake of all sentient beings. And we can really start to put these instructions into our world at all times. And that's the point of it. It's not going to transform us, if we're doing it for 20 minutes out of the 24 hours a day, and hopefully as we become more and more advanced in our non-waking hours, we can be practitioners. We watched Rinpoche do that. Rinpoche would be asleep with his mala moving. Really amazing. He would sleep in meditative posture all of the time, like high meditative posture with his arms crossed, and do dream yoga. He used to actually joke about it. But that's for a really, really high practitioner. But going to bed with a motivation of virtue isn't. Making sure that, as we fall asleep, we're familiarizing ourselves with something positive. Because in the Lam Rim, it says that, if we do that, our whole sleep's virtuous. Doesn't say we're going to have dream yoga and realizations and see deities and, do, the 7-point cause and effect practice the whole night. It doesn't say that, but it says that it'll be virtuous. So it's these little things that we can do. We could abstain maybe from eating meat, or maybe abstain if we eat meat every single day now, maybe we abstain a couple days a week. That's harm reduction. That's reducing harm. And when we go to bed, maybe we think about, how nice it would be if all sentient beings had happiness. I like happiness. What would it take for me to be happy? What would it take for me to help all sentient beings be happy? And if you're like me, that's subject matter. You start thinking about others, it gets boring enough that you'll fall asleep pretty quickly. It's funny when when you're having a hard time and you're obsessing, right, about something going wrong in your life and can't go to sleep, that familiarization with that topic keeps you up. But it's amazing how when you start to familiarize yourself with something virtuous, the topic will put you to sleep almost. And it kind of begs the question, is it just how much more familiar with chaos are we, right, than peace? Because it's so easy for us to just stay engaged with chaos, so much so that we can't fall to sleep. But if we try to engage in virtue or put a Dharma teaching on, it's so easy just to shut off and fall asleep because that's boring to us. So that's a mirror for our mind, right? It's really a mirror for our mind. You know, how easier for us is it to stay kind of paying attention to something virtuous versus paying attention to something that's non-virtuous? Those are the gauges of our mind. The Dharma just tells us all this stuff, and then it's a mirror, and then we look at it. And we look at that mirror and say, is my mind compassionate? Is it more harmful? Do I have more harmful intent than not? Is it more full of wrong views or right views? Do I covet what others have? Or am I okay with what I have because I have an opportunity here to have everything? And each and every one of us has Buddha nature. So how could we want what others have? We have everything that we need to be perfect. We're not missing any of the ingredients to be perfect, except, you know, we have to take some of the wrong ingredients out that we have in there. But we have all the right ingredients there. We have this, kind of seed of compassion. We have a mind that's empty. We have a mind that can mature. So we have what we need. Why would we want what others have? We have everything. If we look at it truly from a Buddhist perspective, we have a mind that can become a Buddha, and we have all the teachings that show us how to do so. You can't buy that with money. You really can't. You know, you can be born anywhere into whatever family you want with whatever money you want, but you aren't necessarily able to hear this teaching on the Lam Rim that will allow you to have everything, allow you to become perfect. I mean, if everyone in the world believed that, what would the, richest person in the world be willing to pay for? How much would they pay for that? The recipe for eternal happiness, the real one, not a drink, not some quick fix, but a real recipe for eternal happiness that knows that eternal happiness really requires everyone else to be happy for it to be fulfilled in a real way. What would someone be willing to pay for that if everyone believed that this was all true? And what's amazing is if you meditate on this stuff, if you familiarize yourself with this stuff and use logic, you can start to see how it's accurate and arrive at a place where it's true. So now you have something that someone would pay probably everything that they have in their bank account for. And you have it right here. You have this wonderful thing. You have this mind. You have a human basis. You're not in hell. You're not a hungry ghost. You're not an animal. You can think. You're not in some realm that's so blissed out you don't want to do anything but bliss out. You can hear me talking right now. You can read. You have this mental continuum, right? We're somewhere where we can hear about the Dharma. The Dharma's here. We don't have irreversible karma. We have all of these wonderful things. The Buddhist teachings come. There's people who practice it, people who are realizing it. So amazing, right? We have so many opportunities right now. And we now have the internet. We can just go to all these different teachings all the time and hear all of this wisdom. We can be like Atisha, going to all these different gurus. Now, qualified gurus, not just anyone talking on the corner, but now we've studied. We have guides in our text to know what teachers would look like or not look like, or should look like or talk like, or, what their teachings, could or should be on. So what a fortunate time. We say, oh, Atisha had over 100 gurus. Well, okay, we have the internet. We can watch the Dalai Lama, tonight 5 times. We could watch teachers that Rinpoche had tonight. They don't even have to be alive. Rinpoche is, passed into nirvana, and he can still teach us like, on the internet in the same way he did. Such an amazing, amazing thing. We have all of these resources. So we have this human basis, we have this mental continuum that can be matured, and we have the recipe to mature it. to have eternal happiness for ourselves and everyone else. So, wow, what an opportunity that is. Sometimes we get bogged down in life is suffering and, but we have to understand that that's just knowledge. It's not something to get bogged down about. That's being intelligent. Saying, yeah, life is suffering. There's a suffering of suffering, suffering of change, pervasive compounded suffering. Okay, I know the current state. Now, if there was nothing that could be done about it, that would be something to be really upset about. Like Shanti Deva said, if there's a problem and there's nothing you can do about it, why worry? There's nothing you can do about it. If there's a problem and there's something you can do about it, why worry? There's something you can do about it. What great wisdom, right? We have a problem. We've identified it in the truth of suffering. But good news, folks, we can do something about it. And we're in a time when a Buddha came that taught Tantra. We can do something about it very quickly if we go in the right order. So how wonderful. So back to the categories. So enables to understand that all the teachings or scriptures are instructions for practice. The greatness of enabling one to easily understand the conqueror's intent. It's very easy to get confused by teachings and try to, what did he mean by this? The Buddha, I think at one point said, kill your mother and kill your father. And he was just talking about renunciation and this idea of attachment to this life. That's all he was talking about. But it was a very figurative point that was presented. And if you didn't see the greater context to what he was presenting and only heard that quote, you just heard a sound bite, it would be very easy to misunderstand what the Buddha was teaching. So you look at it through a lens of understanding, and then you see, the Buddha was talking about renounced householder's life, definitely emerge from this idea of cyclic existence, from the world, be a renunciate, be a monk, a wandering ascetic, or a monk or a nun in a monastery. So the Buddha wasn't talking about murdering anyone, but without an understanding, a greater understanding, and just a sound bite, it's very easy to misinterpret things. And there are a lot of sound bites, you can hear in Buddhism in the West that then turn into entire groups, entire teachings, and they're just a sound bite. And they are kind of a misunderstanding of a greater point that was made. And then the greatness of enabling one to refrain automatically from the great one wrongdoing. So if you know all of this, you're not going to say, well, the Buddha said that and that was wrong, or that was this or that was that. You would understand that was said out of compassion, out of love, and for a reason. And not being clairvoyant, I don't know what all sentient beings need. The Buddha is omniscient and does. And it was for that reason that the Buddha presented things that seemed contradictory, that weren't, and could very clearly be identified as just a cause for Buddhahood, for a being, in the varying different continuums that they have. The Buddha said that there's, the varieties of experience because there's varieties of karma. So there's varieties of things people need to hear in order to be tamed, if you will. And what does tamed mean? Getting rid of ignorance, taming the ignorant mind. The busy monkey mind, or the mind that's out of control, taming that mind. So the next set we get into in terms of the outline is how to listen to and explain the teaching. And specifically, it's great. The outline says how to listen to and explain the teaching, which are the author and the teaching are great. So you had the greatness of the teaching and the greatness of the author. So now it's, how do you listen to a teaching in which the teacher and the teaching is great? Not just any teaching, and when you see teacher and it's referring to Buddha, they use a capital T. It's very interesting. So how would you listen to something that, was taught by someone that was great, about something great, and we've already learned why the teacher is great, right? Why a teacher is great, all of these excellent qualities that Lord Atisha had. We've already learned about, Lama Tsongkhapa, why Lama Tsongkhapa is great and all the excellent qualities Lama Tsongkhapa had. And we've learned why the teaching itself is great, because it has those 4 characteristics of allowing us to see that all teachings are free from contradiction. It allows us to see that all teachings are instructions for practice. It allows us to easily understand the conqueror's intent, and allows us to automatically refrain from the great wrongdoing. So you've established that there's this really incredible thing that you're going to hear. And it's incredible because its topic is incredible, and the teacher who taught it is incredible. And it's a stainless presentation. So how do you listen to such a thing? Well, it says you first contemplate the benefits of hearing such a thing. Then you develop reverence for the teacher. For the teaching and the instructor. And then you look at how then do you actually listen. So we can divide this. We won't go through it in too much detail. There isn't a huge amount of information in the Lamrim Chemo about this section. So we needn't go into great detail, but it says the benefits of hearing the teaching. It says, there's a quote from the collection of the indicative verses in the Lamrim Chemo. And it says, through hearing, phenomena are understood. Through hearing, wrongdoing is overcome. Through hearing, what is meaningless is eliminated. Through hearing, nirvana is attained. Just as someone dwelling inside a house, enshrouded in complete darkness, has eyes but does not see the forms that are there, so also a person born of noble lineage, also possessing intelligence, does not know until told what is virtuous and what is not. Just as one with eyes sees forms by using a lamp, so through hearing what is virtuous and what is not, you will understand what should be done. So again, the Dharma is like a mirror, right? We hear it, and then we know what we're supposed to do, what we should take on, what we should engage in, and what we should refrain from. There's no other way to know what those things are without hearing them. We have to have the wisdom arisen from hearing in order to have the wisdom arisen from analysis. And in order to have the wisdom let me try that again. We have to have the wisdom arisen from hearing in order to achieve the wisdom arisen from analysis. And we have to have the wisdom arisen from analysis in order to achieve the wisdom arisen from meditation, that direct perception, realizing something directly that we talk about. So it has to go in that order. So what we're doing today, if we're listening properly, will be the cause for us to directly realize these topics, to have an new incontrovertible understanding of them that's not conceptual, that directly perceives them. So it will come about by us listening to them. And all of the other qualities come from listening. And we find in the Jataka stories also, it says, through hearing you become faithful. And on Thursday night, we talked about faith, how faith serves as a foundation for aspiration. And aspiration is what you have when you aspire to become a Buddha for the sake of sentient beings. Faith is something that we learn in the beginning stages of the Lam Rim, where we see going for refuge. The causes for going for refuge are fear and faith. How do you develop faith? You develop faith by understanding what a Buddha is, why a Buddha is such an excellent being and is someone who you should have faith in, is an appropriate basis for your faith. So through hearing these things about who the Buddha is and what the path is, you become faithful. You can go for refuge, which is the door into Buddhism. Through hearing about the bodhisattvas and through hearing about the Buddhas, makes you want to become a bodhisattva, wants you to become a Buddha. So you have this faith and then you aspire to be, and then you, because of hearing, become that Buddha. So incredible. We think, oh, we're just sitting here on Sunday listening to something. No, we're hearing something that allows us to become perfect. And the only thing that would allow us to become perfect is what we're hearing today. Eternal happiness is what we're hearing about today and how to get it. How to become perfect and eternally happy. Here's the recipe. Now, how much would you pay, right? So we need to look at what we're doing as something so incredible and rejoice in it when we're listening to these teachings. And so it says you become faithful and your delight in virtue becomes steadfast. Wisdom arises and delusion will vanish. This is worth buying even with your flesh. So you see here, even it's spoken of, like, how much is this worth? Hearing is a lamp that dispels the darkness of delusion, the supreme wealth that cannot be carried off by thieves, a weapon that vanquishes the foe of confusion. It is the best of friends, revealing personal instructions, the techniques of method. So whatever you've heard, if we've heard correctly and it's come into our mind and we know, that can't be taken away from us. All of our material possessions can be taken away. And you hear these stories of these great practitioners who were in jail when, the Mao invasion happened. And they were pretending to be sleeping. And they were actually doing meditation. They were practicing the entire time because no matter what, they took away their monastery, they took their robes away, but they couldn't take their learning away. So these monks continued to meditate. Rinpoche and all of his, these great scholars in Buxa, the British prison camp, for 10 years, they'd lost their country. They lost their families. Many of them, their teachers were killed. But what didn't they lose? All that mattered to them, because they knew it was the only thing that could ultimately help. All of those buildings couldn't ultimately help. But what they couldn't have taken from them, what that invasion couldn't take away, was whatever they had heard, whatever they had analyzed, and whatever they had realized. So we're putting something that can't be taken away into our minds now. And that thing that can't be taken away is what causes us and all sentient beings eternal happiness. So pretty amazing. It is the friend who does not desert you in times of need, a harmless medicine for the illness of sorrow, the supreme battalion to vanquish the troops of great misdeeds. It is the best fame, glory, and treasure, and it is the supreme gift. When you meet with noble beings among an assemblage, it delights the wise. The result of hearing is to engage in substantial practice, or substantive practice. You will be released with little difficulty from the fortress of rebirth. So what other benefit would we need to hear about hearing? The benefit of hearing, we can be released from the fortress of rebirth. Incredible, right? Through hearing, we could be free. And it says, develop enthusiasm from the depths of your heart with regard to the benefits of hearing. And then here's an interesting thing from Asanga's Bodhisattva's Levels. It's basically the whole section of the Lam Rinpoche, but it's, sometimes when it's really small, it's so summarized and beautiful that we're going to have to read all of it. But we're definitely not going to read through the entire book the whole time. But this is probably where I'll stop for today in this section. It says, moreover, Asanga's Bodhisattva's Level says that you should listen with 5 ideas in your mind. First, the idea of a jewel, due to the fact that the teachings are rare because Buddhas seldom appear, nor do their teachings. So when we look at the likelihood of receiving the Buddhist teachings, even right now, just look at the whole world, think about all the sentient beings in it, think about how many of them are going to be able to hear a pathway to Buddhahood in that particular life they're in, and realize that this is a time when the Buddhist teachings are here. Shakyamuni's Buddhist teachings are here. Teachings on Tantrayana are here. The next Buddha who comes, Lord Maitreya, will not teach Tantra. Only a few of the Buddhas and 1,000 Buddhas that will come will even teach those higher teachings. And there'll be a time when you won't even hear the teachings. They'll be at such a decline, you won't even hear of the very basic teachings of Buddhism in this world. So it's very rare that we have the opportunity to hear these things, just like a jewel is rare. They talk about it being more wonderful than a wish granting jewel. I don't even know where you would find such a wish granting jewels thing, but they've got to be somewhere. And I can't even imagine where to find such a thing. We've found something that's more rare than that. And we can get into the rarity because of the causes are rare to be a human. You have to have stainless aspirations, ethics, and a practice of the six perfections. There's a lot of examples of why it's very rare that we're human. It's like a tortoise popping its head up, every, I don't know, million years or something from the bottom of the ocean floor, and there's like a yolk floating around, and then this turtle is able to pop its head through it. And it talks about how rare it is to have this human basis. And then imagine that you get that, and then you have the Dharma too. So, there's two things that you have that are very, very rare. So it says to look at it like you're receiving a jewel, like imagine if, someone rang the doorbell and just started handing you diamonds, just handing you diamonds. Think of it like that. Someone's just handing you jewels. The idea of an eye, since the wisdom that arises together with hearing the teaching becomes greater and greater. So you're able to see more and more when you hear this teaching, hopefully, or at least familiarize yourself with what you already knew, and then that becomes clearer and clearer. So either way, it's opening your eye wider. So by hearing these things, you're able to have greater and greater wisdom, see more and more and more. The idea of illumination, since the eye of wisdom that has arisen will see the real nature, the emptiness and diversity of all phenomena, reality and diversity of all phenomena. So look at it like it's not just the opening of an eye, like seeing normal things. It's opening the eye of true wisdom, omniscience, that will allow one to see ultimate and conventional truths simultaneously. That's what the Buddha can do. Ordinary beings can see conventional truth, or in a state of Arya realization or yogic realization, they're able to see ultimate truth. But those are two separate instances. They can't simultaneously see ultimate and conventional truth. It's either one or the other for a being that's not a Buddha. But a Buddha is able to see both simultaneously without having any interference, without having to wait for another moment to turn the next one on. The Buddha's ultimate understanding of reality and conventional understanding of reality is always on. They don't have to go from this station to the next station the way that we would. We would see conventional reality, then have an inferential understanding of emptiness, and then directly perceive it. And then when we're directly perceiving the ultimate reality of phenomena, we aren't perceiving conventional reality of phenomena. So that object of observation is one or the other, depending on if you're having a yogic perception or just your ordinary daily perception. But a Buddha sees both of those things simultaneously. It's the idea of illumination, since the eye of a wisdom that has arisen will see the real nature and the diversity of phenomena. The idea of great benefit, since in the end, the teachings bestow the results of nirvana and great enlightenment, pretty self-explanatory, and the idea of being beyond reproach, since from this very moment, you will attain the bliss of meditative serenity and insight, the causes of nirvana and great enlightenment. So there's nothing better, it's saying, you're hearing something that from now on will allow you to attain the bliss of meditative serenity and insight, enlightenment. So look at it like that. Don't look at it like, oh man, I had to get up early and listen to, dude, I want to do this again. It's a long holiday weekend. I could already smell the barbecues going. He's talking about being vegetarian. Great, and he's talking about all this other stuff. But then we look at what we're hearing and what that hearing can do, and what the information that we heard, if put into practice, will produce. Wow, that's something substantial. That's something amazing. That's something that we couldn't, we couldn't buy. And Fortunately, we don't have to. Well, we had to buy like a Zoom link, and there's some conventional, things we do have to buy in order for this to go on, and a computer to watch it from, or an iPhone. But in terms of real sacrifice that we have to make, it's not huge to be able to hear these teachings. It's a very, very small sacrifice to be able to commit a couple of hours to 4 hours a week to hearing, and then a few more hours a week to studying, and actual sitting practice. We can become different individuals on a daily, weekly, monthly, yearly basis. And it is a promise. If we engage in it in that fashion, if we don't half-heartedly engage, if we engage in it in a full fashion, we throw ourselves into our practice, well, not being obsessive, not like, oh, we just learned about Buddhism, so let's only do that for 6 months and then throw it in the garbage. That's not what I mean. Being like a very constant river, like Rinpoche talks about, an even stream of water flowing, practicing every day in a very, very, even manner, and studying and keeping up with it, and not throwing it away for a few days, and then, studying really hard. That's something that I do, something that I have to be more even with myself. I can, very easily become obsessed into a topic, and, nonstop studying and trying to find the divisions and everything, and then become exhausted. And then the next day feel like, oh, well, I studied a lot yesterday. Well, yesterday's gone, buddy. What you did yesterday doesn't really make a difference, because there are karmic seeds and experiences that you're going to have that are ripening every moment, that you're going to have to deal with and have to face and have to know how to convert into pathway. And if more of your time and mind isn't focused on conversion, then you will be like Arya Deva says, most beings are involved in the ignoble. Therefore, most ordinary beings go to the lower realms. I mean, very matter of fact. Do we want to be involved in the ignoble and go to lower realms? Do we believe there are lower realms? Do we believe we have a future? If we aren't even there yet, we need to back up and start to read and familiarize ourselves, or not. I mean, or not. But those are the questions we ask ourselves as practitioners, to see if this is working, or if we're just going through motions, or if we're just in a spa with the music on, becoming calmer for the moment, shutting it down, and feeling better for the moment, so that in 3 hours, after the dopamines have worn off and all of the little bliss stuff is worn off, someone cuts you off in the car and you start swearing and screaming at them, and you're in the exact same state that you were before you went into the spa. And everyone's trying to figure out why this isn't working, why all this mindfulness talk in the West isn't working. It seems like the world's more violent. It seems like everybody's still cutting each other off. I go to yoga class and there's like cliques and people yelling at each other and division. Well, it's very easy to understand why. I can only understand from my own side why I would behave like that. If I was doing those kind of things and thinking they were antidote, it would be because it's not an antidote. It's not hitting the target. When you're trying to mature and you're trying to change your mind, you have to get at the cause of its dirtiness and start to work at getting rid of that cause, getting rid of the cause of attachment, the cause of hatred, the cause of ignorance. Because it's those things, those afflictions that make you act. And ultimately, of course, the grasping at true establishment that makes us act in certain ways. It's that ignorance. But if we shoot an arrow and we're not hitting the target, if it's a competition, you can't just, and the goal is to, hit a target. So the goal of our practice is to hit the target of our afflictions, hit the target of our grasping at true establishment, and get rid of it. So we have to use very specific tools, technology, ammunition, right? And scopes to know what we're looking at in terms of the target. And these texts allow us to understand what the target is and how to start to get rid of it. And that will allow us to really change the way we think and feel and behave, because we're getting at the target. We're using wisdom to convert that ignorant mind into something that knows better. Just sitting and chilling out doesn't make you know better, just makes you turn it off for a minute. Doesn't make you know anything new. Maybe you like learned a new way to relax or something. Like after you cut the guy off, maybe like, and then like get so mad you hop out of the car, right? And start like pointing your finger at him, and then the police come. Maybe once you get to jail, you can think about, oh, I remember when I was in the spa. Maybe you can calm yourself down. But what made you, what got you into jail isn't going to be fixed. You may be able to deal with it a little better. I know it's a very coarse example, but think about it. What do we do every day, all day that's just like it? How do we divert ourselves to try to feel better when we know that that diversion doesn't even work at all? Couldn't work. Not possible. No way it would ever work. So with that, I want to say thank you. So wonderful we can go through this text in this way. We'll get into more of these categories. I think this section is so important. It can be overlooked, and I think when it gets taught, it just gets taught really quickly. And I've heard a lot of students say they're bored with some of these topics because over the years they've heard them so many times. And I spoke with someone who kind of said that recently, and I talked to him about the 3 faults of a vessel, and that was one of the teachings. You hear about these pots all the time in Buddhism. And I explained it to him in a way kind of like we're doing today, and showing how you really need to listen well, and why this is it's intentional listening so you can analyze, and how you could become a better friend, right? If every time you engaged with someone, you listened with a way that didn't come in, thinking you already know what they're going to say, or not even listening, or forgetting what they're saying, and then if you forget what they're saying, you talk to them the next time, they're like, I already said this. I know you weren't even listening the last time. He's not a good friend. You start to see how that works. You see how you can become a better human being by understanding the 3 pots. You see how you can be a more compassionate, nonviolent human being if you listen in that way to everyone, so that you can remember what they said. Maybe there's a detail they said that you're going to be able to, as someone who's supposedly trying to help others, use to help them. And it's a tool that we have to develop. It's not something that just happens. Okay, everybody, 1, 2, 3, now listen right. This is something mindfulness is not forgetting the instructions. So, okay, I'm not supposed to listen contaminated or with all these ideas, pre-existing ideas. I'm not supposed to listen to someone like that. I'm not supposed to listen to somebody where I'm kind of listening and I just forget what they said. And I'm not supposed to just be pretending I'm listening and not listening. You see how these instructions can directly affect how we interact with the world. We see how these instructions will make us more compassionate, better human beings, if when I'm listening, I'm thinking of how I can be of benefit to them, trying to think of getting rid of my self-cherishing attitude for just one moment, to listen to what somebody else has to say, because they want and need to say that to me. And that's not to say that you become this martyr. You have to, the bodhisattva is someone who is mature and can do these things. But what could we do to be more like that? What could we do to be more like a bodhisattva who listens in this way that's really beautiful? It doesn't just come out of nowhere. You think about this, when you're interacting with someone. How am I listening to this person? You're analyzing it. You know, you're looking at it. And is that interaction that I'm having? Am I really listening? You know, or is it just going in one ear and out the other, as we say? That's the leaky pot, in one ear and out the other. Or am I engaged? So all of the Lam Rim means something. And it isn't just to be like, okay, everybody, this is the way you're going to listen right now. Sit this way. Everybody get into this position, and you're going to listen this way. And then now we're going to talk about Buddhahood. No, all these things are very intentional, purposeful topics that are supposed to be practiced, and none of them are meant to not be practiced. So, any questions? Fantastic. So we will end there. Let's do the concluding prayers and so forth. Concluding mandala offering and dedication prayer. I just want to say thank you to everybody for listening, for wanting to be better human beings, be better sentient beings, and eventually not be sentient beings, so that you can figure out how to make everyone not a sentient being. I just rejoice in the fact that we're here today and have heard these teachings. And let's do the concluding prayers. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. I dedicate whatever virtues I have collected for the benefit of the teachings and of all sentient beings, and in particular for the essential teachings of Venerable Zandrapa to shine forever. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. I dedicate all this virtue to emulate the knowledge of the hero Manjushri and likewise to Mantabhadra as well. With whatever dedication is praised as supreme by all the conquerors who traverse the three times, I also dedicate all my roots of virtue for the sake of auspicious deeds. In that pure land surrounded by snowy mountains, you are the source of all benefit and happiness. All-powerful Avalokiteshvara Tenzin Gyatso, may you stay until samsara's end. I pray that we may reunite quickly with Kensur Geshe Wandak in whatever form he is in, and that we may recognize that he or she is emanating as our guru, and that in all of our lives, may we meet with him or her and be taught the stages of the path to enlightenment so that we become Buddhas. Thank you so much, everyone. We'll don't forget Thursday night teaching on mind generation, awakening mind, bodhicitta, at 7:30 on Thursdays, going through Panchen Sanandrapa's General Meaning of Perfection, which is a commentary on Lord Maitreya's Abhisama Alamkara. I really encourage everyone to check it out. The text is amazing, and if you are unable to come for whatever reason, all of the teachings are now up on YouTube, and you can subscribe to the channel. I don't even know what that does, but I think you maybe get alerts and there's a new one that comes on or something. I'm not sure, but you can subscribe to the channel, and then you can go to the website if you want to get on the mailing list. We have a lot of folks' emails and everything. Buddha's www.buddhascenter.com, and then the YouTube is Buddha's Center. You'll see a little Buddha in a lotus, black and white picture. So encourage everyone, if you haven't seen the teachings, to go back and follow them, because all of the teachings are teachings that Rinpoche gave. And there's no information that is being presented that can't be traced back to Lord Buddha. And we're presenting things that we were very fortunate to hear, and we're going through them in a detailed fashion to kind of summarize what some of us have gone over for decades. So thanks again, and we're going to hopefully soon get together, do an in-person. Everyone we know currently has COVID for some reason, so we're trying to also keep that in mind. So it's look at even our family. Lori's mother, father, and two daughters currently have COVID. So it's very contagious right now, and with Lori going through her treatments and so forth, can't really afford to get COVID. If I get COVID, she gets COVID. So we're walking a very tight rope. We're not, trying to isolate and not get together, but we're walking quite a tight rope right now, as we were for the last 2 years. It just doesn't seem like the rope gets any less tight, but that is samsara. And if we want the rope to get less tight, then we need to practice Dharma. And that's the only thing that can help. Death will come, nothing can stop it. We don't know when we can die. And the only thing that can help us is the Dharma. And we came together today to learn about the only thing that can help us. So thank you. Have a wonderful Sunday. Enjoy the weekend.
Thank you.
You too, Jeff. Thanks for the teaching again, bro.
We'll talk with everybody soon. Also, we're going to try to put a prayer book together. It is something that I am interested in doing, but things right now are a little bit busy. And but I know that a lot of people would like to have something that they can tangibly hold. And we're going to be doing some Tara practices in the future. So I have to figure out what sadhana and so forth, and how much detail around each of the prayers we want to put. So I'm just kind of sorting all of those things in my mind out and looking for resources right now. But yeah, thanks. Everybody have a wonderful day.